So this has been an interesting year to talk about the Browns draft, especially just because the Browns draft has gone from what we're going to do to 13 to what we're going to do at 44 very quickly. But even though that's the case, right, even though the Browns don't have a first round pick, something I've always said about this draft was, you know, this is a draft where you would rather have more picks in the back end than in the front end just because the value you're going to get out of a player that you get with the fifth overall pick might be the same value that you get out of a player with the 20th overall pick, right? Like, I don't think there's that big of a chasm between those two levels of players. I think there's a lot of really good players. I don't know how many elite players are in this draft, and that's what this draft consists of. So even though the Browns have moved all the way back 44 to 44, I don't necessarily think that changes the people that the Browns were interested in to begin with, because honestly, to me, day two was going to be a much more interesting day of the draft than day one was ever going to be, because those were the players that I was excited about. So who are the players that I'm excited about? Who are the players that I think would look great in brown and orange, great in this Cleveland Browns system? Well, let's go through it. And we're going to start, I think I got about 8 of them. We're going to start with what? Travis Jones. Now, this is Travis Jones's chart. The way you can look at this chart and dissect this chart is the closer to the end of the chart, the top of the chart, is the more abnormal that player is for his player grouping. And then the closer to the center of the chart is the more kind of like abnormal in a bad way, where it's like less. So more up top, less down low. Right? And you see Travis Jones, he stands out in hand size. He has decent arm length, a decent wingspan, a decent weight and height. He's what, six? I think he's like 6'4". Yeah, 6'4", 3/8, 325 pounds. So big boy. The 20-yard shuttle is what, in the 60th percentile. The 3-cone drill, which is important because you want to make sure he has a good 3-cone. It's about in the 80th percentile. Broad jump, pretty impressive. Vertical jump means nothing to me. The 40-yard dash is good, but one thing to watch with defensive tackle 40-yard dashes, because the 40 yards of it don't matter, but the 10 yards of it do. That 10-yard split is a little concerning when you look at Travis Jones, right? You usually want to see somebody at like a 169 or 168 to somewhere around that range. That's elite pass rush range. Now, 176 isn't terrible. It's not like a 1-8 10-yard split, but it's not great either. What Travis Jones would be for the Cleveland Browns is what I've wanted them to draft for quite a while, ever since they lost Danny Shelton, quite frankly. And that is a space taker, right? Somebody who can just eat up space. It was supposed to be Andrew Billings, right? That did not work out. They need a space taker, somebody who can eat a double team and just hold them, right? He could be a guy like Jordan Davis, and we will talk about Jordan Davis in just a minute, who can do that and more. But if you can just do that, I'm fine. And that's what Travis Jones can do. I don't think there's a lot of great pass rush potential with him. I think he'll be a decent enough run stuffer, and he'll just be a big old body you could put in there next to a more pass rush oriented defensive tackle, right? If you get Travis Jones and let's say you pair him up with another player like Perrion Winfrey, I think you're in a very good place in the interior of defensive line, because then you have both of them, right? You have the big guy and then you have the guy who can get to the quarterback. And that's ultimately the mix that you need, and the mix that they've missed out on, and why I think the Browns have been a pretty poor interior run stuffing team. Ever since 2017, they've been bad at it. So that's something I would love to see them improve. I would love to see them address. And I think Travis Jones is a way to address it. Another player I like, we talked about, is Logan Hall, and he has a funky chart. Look at this chart. This chart is funky, is all over the place. He's light, right? He is a light defensive tackle. Now, we're talking about defensive tackles here, so light is a super relative term. The brother is 283 pounds. Like, he is not light. But when you compare him up to guys who weigh 325, 330, sometimes 340, 350, then yeah, he's light compared to those guys, but the Browns tend to go with lighter defensive tackles, so the weight thing doesn't bother people. The wingspan and the arm length, that is going to bother people, right? Where his wingspan is what's his arm length? 32.5-inch arms. I mean, those aren't tiny, but they're not great. and that might scare some teams off, as well as the small hand size and the wingspan. Some of that has to do with his frame, right? Like he might have outgrew his frame in some way. When you see somebody with shorter arms, small hands, but they're a big dude, like sometimes it tells you they've outgrown their frame. That could also lead to injury problems, so that could be a little bit of a red flag. But athletically, there's a lot to be excited about when you talk about him. That's where all that green reaches up to the highest percentiles, right? The height at 6'6" is interesting, right? Because he's so tall, but he seems to have a naturally small frame, which is weird. Like it concerns you, but I don't know if he's this tall, this big. I feel like his health's going to be fine. His body's going to be all right. But those are just some signs that people look at. The height is up there. The 20-yard shuttle, so quick, short area explosiveness is what you want from a pass rushing centered defensive tackle. The 3-cone drill, you want that to be smooth. Make sure he has nice bendable hips. 90th percentile vertical jump. Again, nobody cares how high a defensive tackle can jump, but hey, he can do it. Now, with him, it might matter because he got them short arms, so you want him to be able to bat. So I guess the vertical jump matters, but I mean, if you're going to bat a ball at the line of scrimmage, it really don't matter how high you jump. It's just whether you get your arms up or not. The 40-yard dash is obviously impressive. I believe he ran a 4.88, and his 10-yard split is 1.68. Now, again, it's going to probably go up if you add weight to him, but I think the Browns are a team that would not want to add weight to him. He's a tall defender, not necessarily a long defender, and a guy who can get to the quarterback, and that's going to be interesting. Again, he's 6'6", so he's going to be able to get his hands up and bat passes if he needs to, despite a small arm length and vertical jump. But yeah, that's why I like him. I think he could be a nice pass rush fit. I like his versatility. You could put him at 3 tech, and I think he'll be fine. You can even put him at 4I. I don't know if he is skilled enough to live on a 4 or 5 position when it comes to the defensive line, right? Outside shoulder and maybe outside the tight end. I don't know if he has that ability, but I do like his versatility, right? I do know that you can put him at 3 different positions on the defensive line, and that itself is valuable to me. I think he's a late first-round sleeper, maybe an early second-round pick, but if you get a chance at him at 44, he would be somebody who's hard to pass up on. Another guy that I like that is not going to jump off the athletic tape, right? He's not a T-shirt and shorts player that's going to jump off, and this is saying this about a man who ran a pretty impressive 40 time, right, at 300 pounds. But this is Devonta Wyatt. Devonta Wyatt, his sell is on his tape and what he did at the Senior Bowl. He played at Georgia. I know with these Georgia guys, people are starting to lose their mind right now and talk about like the individual stats of each player. Look, man, when there are that many dudes eating on a defensive line, it's impossible to get the big numbers when you the only dude at one college, right? Like that's just is what it is. You're not going to get 20 sacks at Georgia because somebody else is there already because they got all kind of NFL talent on that roster. Like that, trust me, y'all. Like I know some of you guys are out on the whole Georgia stuff and because he doesn't have these impressive stats, him and Jordan Davis, but we are going to watch Georgia games from 2021 in 10 years and be like, my goodness, they had an NFL football team on that roster, right? Like that, it's going to be like 2013 Florida State all over again, or Miami back in the day, or whoever you want to compare it to. That roster's special. So I don't really take production or snap count out of these guys' hands because they're just tremendous players. There's so many of them, right? Height, weight, nothing exceptional. He's a pretty average height and weight for a defensive tackle, 6'3", 6'2" and 7'8", so 6'3", 304 pounds, pretty average wingspan at 32 and 5/8 inches. Same thing with Logan Hall. Nothing exceptional there. What is exceptional is his 40 time was what was 40? 4.77, which again, is what it is. But that split though, that 1.66 split again at 304 pounds. So you're not talking about adding more weight to the guy. He's already at NFL weight. So that 166 split. That means he's going to be a pretty good pass rusher more than likely. He didn't run any of the other drills, the agility drills, and he didn't do bench press. A lot of these guys didn't do bench press. I guess they just don't do bench press anymore. But yeah, another impressive athlete, real strong hands, real quick inside. Again, he's going to be an excellent pass rusher from the defensive tackle position. Not as versatile as a Logan Hall, but a better bet to be successful or a really good player than Logan Hall, right? At 3 tech. You know, if I got to bet on Logan Hall, I'm kind of betting on that versatility paying out in the long end, but I know I'm taking a chance that he's not as sure as a bet as one of the Georgia guys, right? And Devonta Wyatt, I think he's absolutely 100% going to be a solid defensive tackle in the NFL. Whether he's a Pro Bowler or not, I don't know. But he will be a solid defensive tackle in the NFL, right? And that's what you have in somebody like Devonta Wyatt. Now let's talk about the bell of the ball when we talk about Georgia. This chart is ridiculous, y'all. Y'all have seen what these other charts look like. This is Jordan Davis's chart. This is the most ridiculous chart I've ever seen in my life. Like, this is everything's in the top percentile. They don't know what to do with the dude like Jordan Davis. There are some concerns about him that I will address, but let's just run it down. If you haven't heard, homie is special from any measurement, right? 6'6", 3/8 inches, 341 pounds. 300. Vince Wilfork was 320. And Vince Wilfork is like the big dude, right? This man 341. 341. And it's one thing to be 341, right? It's another thing when you 341, have a wingspan of 81 1/8 inches, 34-inch arms, so long-ass arms. You have hand size of 10 3. Well, I don't know what hand size has to do with this. And then you ran a 40 at 4.78 with a 10-yard split of 168. Vertical jump, 32 inches. Ridiculous. A ridiculous vertical jump for a man that size. And a broad jump of 123 inches, which makes no sense. It absolutely makes no sense that he can jump that. Like, Odell Beckham didn't have a broad jump that good at 200 pounds and 5'10". This man is 6'6", 41 pounds, and had a better broad jump than Odell Beckham Jr. coming out of LSU. Freaky. Now, a guy like this with a chart like this is going in the first round. You would probably have to trade up before the pick that you even had in the draft, right? You would probably have to trade up to like 12 if you want to get him. It's highly unlikely that the Browns get their hands on a Jordan Davis, right? And you probably gonna have to settle with the Jordan Davis you got at home, which is Travis Jones, right? Like, Travis Jones is the Jordan Davis you got at home. Did Jordan Davis though? This is why Jordan Davis is different. Just an incredible athlete at that position. I can't say it enough. His tape is very good. There are some people who have issues with this tape because he played like 50% of his snaps, and he didn't have the measurable numbers that a lot of people have. I have already given my argument to why some of that stuff does not matter with these Georgia players, and a lot of that has to do with the depth that they have. If you buy it, you buy it. If you don't, you don't. But I think this is going to be a really good player. Quick, explosive, physical, willing to fight with his hands, loves to fight with his hands, loves to get under people's pads, loves to push dudes back. And if you're worried that he's a bully because he's going to only be bigger, stronger, and faster than everybody else, and that's the only reason he was successful at Georgia, brother's going to be better and faster than everybody else in the NFL. Nobody has this chart in the NFL. I don't know who does, but this is like some Myles Garrett stuff right here. So, no, this brother's going to be really good. At worst, he's going to be a excellent run stuffer. Like, at worst, he's like the Jadeveon Clowney of defensive tackles, which is pretty good, right? Like an excellent run stuffer. Doesn't get the sack numbers that you might have expected out of a defensive tackle, but whatever. Like, very productive, very helpful player for a defense. And at his best, I don't know, man. Like, the ceiling is the roof for this guy. Just an incredible athlete, an incredible plus athlete. Great tape, skilled enough at this point. I mean, he's not raw. Like, he is a skilled player coming out the University of Georgia. Oh, man. Like, I don't know what else to say. That is he is as special as an athlete as we have seen come out the draft since like Myles Garrett or Chase Young. He's that level of a special athlete. And if a team decides that they go and pass on him and they have a defensive tackle need, I feel sorry for them. This is the guy to get. Jordan Davis is incredible. He will have a long career. The next player is somebody y'all know I love, and this is Perion Winfrey. I'm not going to be long on this because I talked about Perion enough. Great wingspan, arm length, hand size, 10-yard split, 40-yard dash. Height's okay, weight's a little low. Browns like these lighter guys. I think this is a perfect fit for what the Browns want because this is a pass rushing defensive tackle that seems to be what they like to prioritize in the draft. A guy under 300 pounds that can get to the quarterback from the interior. He is 290, 6'3", 5'8 inches, super long arms, 35.5-inch arms. And his 10-yard split is, again, 168. That's an elite level 10-yard split. Again, quick hands, quick inside, loves to fight, loves to play football, has an endless motor. I can't speak enough of the praises of Perion Winfrey. If the Browns draft him, I'd be ecstatic because I know that's going to be an excellent player. I think he's a top 15 player in this draft. Whether people are with me on that, that's on them. I think when all is said and done, this is going to be somebody that people are going to talk about as one of the best 15 players in this draft. And honestly, this defensive tackle class is incredible. 5 of these guys would be the best defensive tackles in like the last 3 drafts combined, right? Like all 5 of these guys would be excellent defensive tackle prospects. And I ain't even talked about all the great best defensive tackle prospects. These are just the ones I like. And that's insane, right? So this class, defensive tackles, wide receivers, it's insane. The amount of good players that are here that you can get in the first 2 days of the draft. All right, let's talk about some wide receivers though real quick. Now, when it comes to wide receivers, I'm looking for something very specific. Tight ends as well. I have 3 pass catchers that I'm going to talk about. First guy I like is somebody you've heard me talk about for a while. Even though he's in North Dakota State, Bison. Look, I went to Youngstown State. I've watched North Dakota State Bison just tear up my Poe Penguins. My Poe Penguins every year. I don't think I've ever seen them beat North Dakota State. So I do have a little bit of hate towards North Dakota State, but I ain't going to let that get in the way of evaluating what I think is going to be a good player. A 6'4", 208-pound wide receiver who ran 4.36. I think he is a slot. I think he's an occasional Z, but a slot, right? Maybe, my bad, occasional X, but I think he will shine at slot, right? He's a seam slot. You want to just put him up the seam, kind of use him the same way you'll use a tight end in an empty set, right? Where you give him those seam routes where you're not asking him to cut too much because at 6'5", he's not going to be able to cut the greatest. But his broad jump was pretty impressive. Very explosive player coming out of North Dakota State. Vertical jump, impressive. 10-yard, 40-yard dash, impressive. 10-yard split, beyond impressive. That means he has a great release. He would be a good fit for the inside. If you can get his route running up to par, I think he would be a great big slot, right? Joe Vicious, but like with the juice. Cooper Kupp is another guy that was like that. Now, I'm not going to say this guy is anywhere close to Cooper Kupp because I remember when Cooper Kupp was at Eastern Washington. My Penguins beat them though, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, so shout out to the Penguins. But I remember when Cooper Kupp was out there at Eastern Washington, he was a beast at Eastern Washington. That man was having like 2,000-yard seasons in college football. So he is nowhere near a Cooper Kupp, and you should not expect Cooper Kupp. But what you should expect is another guy who can be a big slot that could be real helpful. Think of like Joe Vicious on steroids is what I think his potential could be. And that's what this chart says. All right, let's talk about another guy who I think can be a big slot in a different way, and that's Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce, my bad. He's a big slot. He's 6'3". I think he ran a 4.40, so fast player. The 10-yard split's kind of disappointing at 158, 211 pounds, 158. It's not that great. Hand size is a little bit concerning. Doesn't have great hand size at 9-inch hands. Didn't seem to come up as a problem when you watch his tape. The arm length is pretty good. The wingspan's pretty good. The weight's pretty good. The height's pretty good. But this concerns me, right? The 20-yard shuttle in the 3-cone drill. Now, Christian Watson probably has the same deal going on in his 20-yard shuttle and his 3-cone drill, just albeit in a higher but low percentile. He's a big slot. and maybe an X receiver. Well, not an X receiver, maybe a Z. But he's a big slot, most definitely, right? You want to have him on those seam routes. You want to have him just run one cut routes, right? You don't want to have him do a bunch of in and outs. That's for Amari Cooper, where Amari Cooper go in and out of his breaks like that, and you ain't gonna see him. Alec Pierce, he ain't gonna do that, right? He is a slower slot. He's gonna have slower slot routes, but I think with the right fit in the offense, which the Browns do have, you can use him as kind of a pseudo big wide receiver, tight end type thing in the slot, and I think you'll be fine with it. I like this player a lot. Chigoziem Okonkwo is the guy I want to draft as the developmental tight end. The Browns have a third tight end spot to fill. I don't feel like they should spend money on that spot, but I do think they should spend a draft pick on that spot, right? And this is the type of guy that you want, right? The height and weight aren't great. You're going to have to add some weight on him. He's 6'2", which isn't small, but it's just most tight ends about 6'5", 238 pounds. So a lot of people have him pegged as a flip player, right? You would have him at fullback and you would have him at tight end. What do they call it? Y-back nowadays. But that's what a lot of people have for him because they don't think he's big enough to live on the offensive line. I think he could be a second tight end or a kind of Kyle Juszczyk type player where he's really a second tight end, but also sometimes he lead blocks. He did a little bit of that at Maryland. His athletic ability is pretty impressive, right? You look at the 10-yard split, so explosive off the line of scrimmage, explosive coming on blocks and coming through blocks, 40-yard dash is in the 94th percentile for a player in his position. Again, he's very small and he's small and light for his position, so that should be expected, but he did run a 4.52 40, which is pretty good. The vertical jump at 78 inches kind of alleviates the issues that you have with his height. And the arm length, I think, is a little bit of an issue when you talk about him being an inline blocking tight end. I don't know if that's in the cards for him, right? But I do think he's a nice developmental piece that you can have here. You can hide him on the roster really as a fullback instead of a tight end, which can allow you to keep a inline blocking guy in. I think if the Browns draft him, they use him as that kind of a hybrid player, right? You'll see him being the fullback. You'll see him being the second tight end. He won't ever be the third tight end because he's never going to be an inline blocking guy. But you would have him kind of float in between there because he is a physical enough player. He is a willing enough player to where he can block if he has to, but you would rather have him going downhill on run plays than like have him out there during pass sets and like 12 personnel. So that's what I think that the Browns are going to do with that tight end position. They're going to draft somebody. If you're going to draft somebody with that versatility. I do think he could be that kind of a player, that hybrid fullback tight end guy that they're looking for. I think they wanted Harrison Bryant to be that. Harrison just had issues getting low enough to get underneath pads at his height. I think this is a guy where that won't be an issue. And I think he's a guy who could be a plus in the passing game. So that's my thoughts on my favorite players for the Browns in this draft. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Again, guys, thank you for watching. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.